Okay. Well, Stephanie's ready. Okay. Call the meeting to order. For the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to approval of the agenda. That's you.
Okay.
Playing Dana's role tonight.
Madam President, I move that we approve the agenda with the following amendments. Additional certified and classified personnel actions is presented, item E3, and add item H4, new business, discussion of Board of Education vacancy.
Is there a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Do we have any public comments? My helper's trying to. Okay. Any correspondence? Then we will move on to the consent agenda.
Okay, Madam President, again, I move that we approve the consent agenda. As published.
Second. Okay. Any discussion?
I will recuse myself from this vote as a conflict of interest.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Give them a minute to step out. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passed. We will go to the board. Oh, yeah, we can let him come back.
Yeah.
I about forgot you when you were gone for 10 seconds. Okay, board goals update. Yeah, you.
Right, going fast.
This is Dr. Joe Alcorda, so he's the new HR director.
Welcome to the garden, huh? Yeah.
We just wanted to be behind you.
Okay. Can you keep me on how we do? Okay. There you go. We just want to give you a brief summary, kind of where we're at as far as with this next school year coming. And then two, I just wanted to give you some information just on our department in general. So here's basically the outline of the organizational chart of our department. Of course, Jason's the assistant soup over HR and has his credentials there, and then myself, and then we have Sharon, who's the administrative assistant, basically to everybody there. And then we have our HR coordinators, and we have a certified full classified personnel specialist, substitute personnel specialist, and then a long-term sub. And I do want to let you know that these ladies have been phenomenal as far as getting out and recruiting. And they really put the district in a really, really good light as far as when the new school year is coming about. Okay, so here's the historical view of our district, just so y'all can y'all kind of get a picture of it. And I think it's included in your board notes as well. But it basically tells you our certified staff, this year we're right at 621. Classified staff is 456. And just so y'all know, the difference is basically your certified staff needs some type of licensure or some type of credentials from the state. So they're your teachers, they're your administrators, you know, any regard that direction. And then your classified is kind of everyone else, everyone that really, you know, helps the district run, your bus drivers, your cafeteria workers, your maintenance. I mean, and the list goes on and on. Paraprofessionals, and so forth. Clerical. Here's a breakdown. If you're looking at our staff throughout the, you know, kind of what percentages and so forth like that, you can see that the majority of our staff is made up of teachers. Basically, 59% of all of our personnel that we hire are teachers. And then it kind of has a breakdown there. You have your maintenance, your food service at 3%, transportation 4%, technology 3%, and so forth all the way around. So just kind of letting you know that the majority of the expenditures on personnel side are in the classroom with teachers. Okay, here's I thought y'all might be interested in this as far as your teacher turnover rate. And it kind of shows you our number of actual, you saw the discrepancy there between your certified and your teachers. I mean, because you have other administrators and so forth like that, directors. And so there's 516 teachers as far as those positions for this year. This last year, we had 72 resignations or retirements, or I don't think there was any terminations, but you had 72 of those. And then our newly hired so far are at 44. And so you can tell that there is a little gap between what we lost and what we're still trying to find. But and it gives you the little history there as well throughout the years.
You may be covering this, but could I ask a question?
You sure can.
I apologize.
Now, it doesn't mean I have the answer, but you can ask the question.
Okay, the slide before the teacher turnover. We've got student enrollment today at 7212.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
And we had 7813 and 1516.
Yes, sir.
You have that much of a difference, huh? Wow. And then the staff, pretty close to 1516, but down from recent years.
That's correct, on your student enrollment.
Okay. And then the next one on teacher turnover here.
Okay.
Just looking at trends, there isn't any real trend on the resignations and retirements, except that there's a surge and then it drops off. And then there's a surge, it appears to me, as far as through time.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, I also want to talk to you a little bit about, what are our employment procedures? What do we have to do to become actually a district employee? And so, all of our district employees start off with an online application. And then once that application is accepted and so forth, received, we try to set up an interview. Now, what I'm finding out is most of these interviews are set up through the HR department. But I think sometimes a few maybe principals might set up their own, but for the majority of them are set up through HR. We check professional references. So everyone that applies, we call, and if we don't get at least 2 professional references, we call and make sure that those are filled out and completed prior to, or just right after the interview or whatever. We just want to make sure that we're hiring good folks. We review their credentials, review any type of certifications. After all those are reviewed and so forth like that, 1 or 2 things can happen. Typically, we go ahead, I put onboard at the end, but as I'm thinking about the procedure, it actually comes up above the fingerprinting, because the fingerprinting and background check here in Kansas, it takes like weeks to get it back. And so anyway, we typically go ahead and offer the job and onboard the people before we actually get the fingerprinting back. Health screening and the TB test, those are both state mandated. And we have a pretty good little return rate on that, a little quick return. But, we've had some phone calls to different entities here in town to hopefully expedite that. Some of our folks were calling us back and saying, hey, you know what, I'm not going to get my TB test until August the 15th or, and so, but we made some phone calls to some of the health professionals. And so they're really, really working with us here in the community to kind of expedite those. And they've done a good job at that. But that's typically the hiring or the employment procedure process. Do want you to know that every single one of our employees has to go through that fingerprinting background check, okay? It doesn't matter whether you're dealing with kids or not dealing with kids. That's just basically standard procedure. Okay, so here's our newly hires for this year. So as you're looking at this year's, we've actually hired 18 elementary teachers, 5 intermediate school teachers, 4 middle school teachers, 11 high school teachers. There's the SPED, about 6 SPED teachers altogether. So total teachers, about 44, which is indicated on the other slide. Other certified personnel is 9 other side personnel that we've hired. 60 classified that we've hired. Remember, it's classified as any from classroom aide, custodial, bus driver, the whole gamut, food service, any of those services. We've hired 56 long-term subs for this year. And so our total hiring for this year so far is 169 folks.
Does this include, like, if someone transfers from an elementary to a middle school?
No, these are straight, just new hires. And I did count some of our long-term substitutes, which I think is that they've been in some positions like 2 or 3 years. But each year we hire, it's a new hire basically because they're not guaranteed employment from year to year. But I do want to tell you all this, that our long-term substitutes, we still look like, and I've told my ladies this, we still need to look at those as vacancies. I mean, we're still looking for certified teachers to fill those spots. We've been very blessed though to be able to have, I think right now, if school was to start tomorrow, we're short maybe 3 coverages, a couple of special ed spots and I think a music spot. But like I said, our ladies in the HR department have done a phenomenal job just getting us ready to roll. And our principals and so forth, I mean, they've been great as far as interviewing and stuff like that and offering jobs. And I really have heard a great deal from our principals, just kind of thanking the HR department, thanking the ladies from having such a quick turnaround. And so anyway, we're trying to expedite the process for sure. Okay, recruiting practices. I was telling Mr. Root here earlier, HR has changed over the years. I mean, nowadays, it used to be where, they come knocking at your door. I want a job. But now I tell my lady, I say, we're like carnies. We got to say, hey, come on, come to Garden City. We got a deal for you type of deal. And so we're constantly, even now, our recruiting practice, we're still looking for teachers. We're still looking for supportive staff. Most of y'all, or if you had kids in the district, probably went to the, what was that called that we did, the enrollment. And so we had a booth set up there. We set up that booth for 3 days, just trying to get folks that already live here in Garden City to come work for the school district. Our goal was to get about 50 new informational cards from folks, and we ended up getting about 62. So we're excited, and we set up interviews, and I don't know how many. I should have checked before I even started the story, so I could have a good ending. But I know that there were some new hires that came out of all those cards and so forth. So we're excited about that and getting out there and just letting they went to the books on the bus. I mean, wherever we can go to recruit our folks, we're trying to recruit. In fact, I know Glenda, she went and goes and gets 2 employees. She goes, gets her fingernails done and toenails done. And all of a sudden we have 2 new employees. So we're going to try to send her out on a weekly basis just to get that done. Hopefully get some more employees that direction.
I use leave though. I think I should get some.
That's right.
Yeah, I've done it twice and twice I've come back with an employee, so.
So anyway, we collect resumes, we send all that information to HR. We set up online interviews, and if we do face-to-face, it's fine as well. We invite certified staff to come out and look at schools, visit campuses, send a letter of intent, and then we offer the position to them. So that just kind of shows you the practices and policies that we do, procedures. Okay, so again, we're constantly trying to see, as far as like our teachers, trying to work with some of the alternative licensing programs, the transition to teachers. And a lot of this still, I'm trying to learn the verbiage and trying to get in there. I have a call into KSU. I want to go out and meet the professors at all the universities and just let them know, hey, listen, we want your student teachers to come to Garden. That's one thing that I really have heard from our administrators, a strong feeling, if we can get them to Garden, they'll stay in Garden, because they really do feel like we have a great educational product, we have a great community, and we just need to get them here. And so anyway, these are just some programs that we're currently working with, and we're going to continue just to try to develop partnerships with other colleges and universities. We're talking to GC3 about doing some classes for our paraprofessionals. If there's a way we can get them to get their 60 hours to maybe maneuvering them up to a long-term sub, to moving up to, maybe getting their degree and so forth like that. So those might be some things that we bring back to y'all as far as a board to try to get us to approve, to try to get us to thinking outside the box to offer our employees, especially the ones that already live And speaking of student teachers, speaking of trying to get them here's we've started hiring kind of those the student teaching incentives. So this year we have sent out 8 signed agreements for the fall of 2022. So those student teachers are here. Basically, what that is we provide them with some monetary compensation, and they sign a contract to agree to be with us for 2 years after graduation. So they're gonna student teach for us, but then after that, they have a 2-year commitment with the school district. And here's a big question. This is what we have to answer for people and for our recruits is why USD 457. And so, Garden City Public Schools is an outstanding place to work. And why is it? Well, we provide high quality professional development, competitive compensation. So we got to make sure that we are in that loop, and we have to compare ourselves to other entities close by. The Dodge Cities, the Liberals, the Holcombs, the Lakins. I'm trying to think of all the towns that I heard here recently. So we got to do that. Make sure we stay on top of that. Instructional support. We have a good instructional support with the curriculum, with the instructional coaches. Time for collaboration. You'll notice that a lot of our schools have the PLCs, professional learning communities, where they get together and they can hopefully develop in their craft. Positive, safe working environment. Strong administrative leadership. And no, Dr. Dominguez didn't ask me to put that in there. I just put that on there on my own there. But we have a strong administrative leadership team. Opportunities for innovation. And then, of course, like I said earlier, we're looking for opportunities for them to grow professionally. So we're looking at grow your own programs with our paraprofessionals, our classified staff. We have the master's reimbursement, and then we also have the KSU leadership cohort where they can get their admin certification as well. But that's it. That's all I have for you. Do you have any questions for me that I can answer? That's the key one.
When you try to grow your own program or the student teaching to become teachers, is there any incentive for them, I know there's testing involved for their certification. Does the district offer any kind of incentive for that?
Yes, there's a monetary incentive that we give them to do that, for that commitment coming back to us. Jason, you know what it is off the top of your head? I'm losing that amount.
On the masters, we pay for the masters, and then they are,
We pay up to $5,000 for
Right.
the masters.
and then they are here. The transition from a para to a bachelor's, we don't have any program in place. We've started kind of exploring that within the HR department about how we can help kind of do that through your grow your own. We don't have anything in place right now for that transition between an associate's and a bachelor's. I will say Dr. Dominguez and I went to Soups Council in Sublette last week. We actually, Dr. Alcorta, Dr. Dominguez and I went to Southwest Plains back in June, and we started having a discussion about, as a community of Southwest Kansas, how can we help with this teacher retention and teacher shortage? And part of it was that the group that was there that day, I think there's about 15 different districts represented, is to have a short-term plan to support this and a long-term plan. Short-term plan that came out of that group was that Southwest Plains would be the cohort group to start hiring retirees to fill vacancies within the community on a short-term basis. So instead of looking for long-term subs that may not be certified in an area, they could hire someone that is a retiree that's certified in an area and then be able to place them for a year kind of as a long-term sub, but they would be a highly qualified educator. So we see that as a short-term kind of solution that we're willing to help participate in. The long-term solution is potentially looking at a foundation of sorts to help subsidize the distance between either a high school graduate or an associate's degree to a bachelor's, and helping subsidize people within the local community. Out of those 44 new hires, it's hard to have the total numbers, but very few of those are brand new out of college. We are taking employees from other towns, just like other towns are taking employees from us. And so this foundation would be a group of schools that would have to make a financial commitment to the foundation, as well as working with our business partners to make a commitment to bring people to Southwest Kansas. And we would bridge that gap between their high school diploma and a bachelor's, or an associate's and a bachelor's, but then they'd have to sign between a 3-year and a 5-year commitment to teach within a school in Southwest Kansas. So if a school like, and Tyson Essinger was working with this superintendent from Deerfield, if he's got someone in Deerfield that's interested in doing this, the foundation may be able to pay for their schooling so they can come out of it debt-free, but he may not have an opening in Deerfield, but we may have an opening in Garden. And then the next year, someone from Garden, we may not have an opening for him, but he has the need. And so it'd be creating a little bit more of a community to help the teacher shortage and the teacher retention than everybody playing Hunger Games and we're just scrapping from each other. So those are two things that have come out of a larger consortium kind of ideas of helping some of the teacher recruitment and retention. And one of them is having a foundation to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, I definitely think there's some merit to that. I think
And
it's-
trying to do it where they don't have to come out with debt. So it's basically a scholarship. So Fort Hays has what's called the Noyce Scholarship right now for math and science teachers. They basically can get the last 2 years of their degree paid for at Fort Hays. So they get 2 years, full ride, no debt, but they have to work in a rural Western Kansas for 5 years as a math or science teacher. Kind of stealing that idea and thinking we could do that from, college class 1 until bachelor's degree or bridge that associates to a bachelor's degree, but doing it in a foundation, kind of a 501(c) or 501(c) kind of entity. But we would have, as a district, we may be looking at what kind of financial commitment can we do to help support that. But then we'd be recruiting businesses, because if people are coming to Garden City to live, or to Sublette to live, or to Elkhart to live, they're bringing an economic incentive because they're going to buy houses, they're going to buy groceries, they're going to live here. And so our businesses would be as benefit from us filling our 56 vacant positions as we would as well.
Thank you.
One quick question I have on the financial side too, either one of you. I know it's a little tricky to do this, but when we ask for teachers, highly qualified teachers to come out of retirement, we have the Capers Challenge many times. And it kind of costs them to come out of. And so I assume part of our look there is to try to help offset some of that additional expense, or.
Well, we can, if we hire them, if Southwest Plains does, they have different ways. If they're as a consortium, they may not, they're still bound by the same Capers laws, where you make over 25,000, then you got to start paying the tax. But some of them, they may be hiring someone just to work part-time. So you may be working 4 hours in this building and just going to get 24,999. And then they might hire someone else because they may have retirees that want to work part-time and not so much full-time. If they went that route with that short-term program we talked about, they said they would take care of kind of eating some of that Capers. Now, they would charge us for the services. If you remember, we used Elevate last year. Those of you who were here last year, we used Elevate in the high school. It was an online component where we purchased hours from this curriculum company. We had to pay them. They Zoomed in a teacher. We had a pair there. We had to pay for that. It would be a similar type service that we would pay for those hours for someone to come teach if we needed.
But that's something that we need to research as well. And that's what we want to bring to y'all probably later on in the school year, getting ready for next year, just to kind of see if there's some things that we want to do as a district to help maybe entice some of those teachers to come this direction. Those retirees.
Right now, if a retiree comes back to work for us, their salary is calculated, and then the Capers penalty is calculated and taken off of the top of what their wage agreement is. And then, so they themselves pay the penalty out of their salary.
I knew there was an actuarial cost.
And that's a district decision. Some districts are now starting to look at that and offer to pay that.
Right. Well, and like Glenda was telling me earlier, I mean, we're kind of the only, the public schools is the only entity in the state that actually has to pay that. Law enforcement and some other folks don't have to do that. Yeah, so.
Is that a statutory thing? Okay, Capers law, Capers codes.
Working after retirement, or I think if you just Google the statutory, it's like 7 or 8 years old.
There's a lot of things here,
Mhm.
not the least of which we haven't even really talked about is it's the whole area of retaining the teachers, the great teachers that we have.
That's right.
And we don't want anything to get really out of whack
Correct.
there as well.
Yeah, and that's where you go back to looking at your compensation, your benefits, and any type of items. You can do that with the teachers, and providing a safe and really welcoming, learning environment for those, work environment for teachers. you know, because life's too short. I always tell people, life's too short to work somewhere where you don't enjoy going to work every day. So, so anyway, that's what we need to do as a district, provide that great environment for the teachers. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. It sounds like.
I would just
Go
make a
ahead.
comment. I would just like to thank you and your team. I know you guys have jumped straight into the deep end on this, and you guys have been working extremely hard, and I appreciate all that.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'll say one thing, it's just from chaos to transition. What is that transition going to look like in the traditional, as Mr. Root said, the commodity that used to be teachers and people would come to us in groves. How do we brand ourselves to continue to move forward? Because it is a branding. It's the commodity is still there, but if the teachers are not there in droves, then it is a branding issue. So we're from chaos to transition and commodity to branding, and that is what we're working on. Try to move forward. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. It sounds like you've been busy.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the school year. So, we will move on to unfinished business, the COVID plan update. And Teddy finally settled down, so I guess you get to for the moment.
Then not taking.
We were having toddler moments, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, I'm trying. I did leave you guys a hard copy of this at the table. Thank you. So in order to access ESSER's funds, we have to provide a COVID plan, and it has to be attached to our website. So the questions come to us and we are required to answer them and put them on our website. So we did this when we started, then it has to be updated every 6 months. So this is our update. Michelle and I will answer any questions as we go. I'm just going to kind of walk you through our documents and see where it takes us, I guess. So we tried, when Michelle and I started looking at this, we tried to take out what we thought wasn't going to be used anymore, like at all kinds of things, or where we know we want to do mass optional. So there's some things then that can be changed with that. So the first question was universal and correct wearing of masks. I have a track change one for you so that you can see what I've taken out, hopefully. But we did leave in there that masks will be optional for this year. If a mask is worn, then it's just an informational part that says, this is how you wear a mask correctly. So again, masks are optional, but if you choose to wear one, here's information on how to do it correctly. I'm not going to read through this because, as you can see, it's several pages. So stop me at any point and say, wait a minute, let's talk about this. But this is purely just mask protocol if you choose to wear one.
And that's what I was gonna ask Linda, if you wanna go through all of it and then we come back to parts, or if you'd like people to ask questions.
Whatever's easier for you guys, it makes me no difference, so. Do it however you wish.
I guess I wonder why we have, I mean, how to correctly wear it, but like with the mask break and stuff. Does that have to be in there if it's optional? I mean, can the child take a break anytime they want if it's optional?
Yeah, and we've talked about that, where protocol might come in is if the health department says, we've got an outbreak and we need everybody in this classroom to wear a mask, then we might need Right,
Wouldn't we
protocol.
revisit the policy and put other things in place at that time?
We don't have to with this policy. Because there's a last line in there that says if the health department, or, we will follow the guidance of the health department, whether it's state or local.
Is that something the health department's currently focusing on in other areas of the community of potential of requiring masks in businesses or other places like that?
No, but I know like nursing homes, I know there was just a recent outbreak in one of the nursing homes, and so, in those situations where it's congregate living and they're around each other a lot, then they had some.
And is that, when that situation happens, is that a recommendation, a guideline? I have a problem with that, I'm sorry. Or is that a mandate that the health department's requiring?
I would say that in that facility is probably a mandate, but if somebody wanted to take their loved one out of that facility and take them home during that time, that it's in that phase, then they could do that. So it would make that person stay there and do that if that's not something that that person either didn't want to do or the family didn't want to do.
I'm trying to define or understand where the line is drawn from it being optional and then required by law or mandate that we have the ability to tell people they have to wear masks in the
Well,
building. Or the health department's telling
You
them
come
that.
in and say that this is what they would suggest that we do, or they mandate, but if you didn't want your child to be in there wearing a mask, then you have the option to have your child at home during that time, which has been the same way that we've had it in the past.
I guess I don't understand why they're required to have that much information, or
No.
why couldn't it be just, I
No,
mean,
we can adjust it.
Yeah.
basically the first sentence, and then if it's worn, it must follow the dress code.
We need that line in there.
Right, but I don't understand why we need to put all the other stuff in there if it's completely optional.
Yeah, I think it was put in there originally just to provide information for the teachers on things that they can do to give mask breaks or that kind of thing, but
But you're right,
it doesn't have to be.
yeah, if it's optional, that we can strike those components of it for sure, so.
So if I'm understanding correctly, let me see here. The first line stays, masks will be optional. Wear your mask correctly, does that stay in or go out?
Just
I would just have masks
wear your
optional.
optional. If a mask is worn, it must follow the standards set forth in the school dress code.
So leave the dress code line in there and take the rest of it out. Is that the consensus? Okay, see head shake. And the next section will be taken out as well because it's about mask breaks and when they can happen. So the next one is facilities. Again, this is guidance for teachers if they have several cases and want to do some kind of social distancing. These are ideas.
So does COVID have to be in there? Because you could have multiple cases of flu, of strep throat, does COVID specifically have to be mentioned for that, for the?
This is a COVID plan, so.
Right, but
I agree that if there's other outbreaks, you're gonna try to do something to cut down on that. I just think that wording was put in there because that is what the plan is.
I'm not sure if I know exactly the direction Jackie's going, but I kind of feel that way too. Is there a way to have a plan that's basically for, I mess up the word every time, communicable diseases like the flu and COVID without specifically just targeting COVID? Or do we have to have that for the ESSER's funding? Or can the answers to those questions?
You want me to find
That
out?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
You want me to see if I can find
Yeah,
an answer to that?
I don't know.
So
if
you would
anybody
like it
else-
to say, if possible and when necessary, classrooms with outbreaks of COVID or other diseases will be, or
I guess I don't know, kind of where Jennifer is, I don't know why we'd have to have a specific policy for, I guess wondering if it could be covered all under one, rather than having a COVID plan, but then something completely different. If you know, there's been years that my kids have been in school that they've had classrooms completely closed because of flu.
Right, right.
I mean, it doesn't,
Okay, I'll check on that one, if we can add that or change the wording a little bit on that one. I will do that.
I would just have to say it's cleaner, I think, to reference it. And put or if you want to, just so that it orients the thinking process of what we're talking about.
Well, the goal is to have healthy kids in school, and if the child's or staff member is sick, they need to be home. And the COVID,
I think the reason why it was worded in this particular
Right, right.
document is just because that's what that document was.
Yeah,
was
we had to have
given
this.
to
Yeah,
us. And so
exactly.
this plan you have to
And-
do, you have
and
to
I-
access that, so.
and I'm hoping we can go a little bit of a different direction and encouraging parents to be responsible when their kids are sick. It contradicts a little bit when typically say a kid has the flu or a virus that they're running a fever, they stay home until they haven't had a fever for 24 hours versus, I think this says 5 days, I believe, or no symptoms, if they've tested positive for
It's on
COVID.
this one of the other documents.
Okay, that was a different, okay.
The fever is still 24 hours.
It is,
so,
okay.
Yeah, irregardless of what kind of fever you have, whether it's
Okay.
caused by COVID or whatever, it's still.
That's where I
24 hours.
misunderstood, or I.
Fever-free. The 5 days might be when you're talking about somebody who's positive with COVID.
Mhm.
The guidelines right now is that they stay home for 5 days.
Okay.
And then on day 6, they can return wearing a mask for 5 days.
And testing is optional.
Testing is optional.
Jackie, I jumped on your question.
no, that's
I
fine.
apologize.
I think it would be easier rather than having, if it could be just an overall,
Plan.
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know the specifics of what it has to have the key worded in or on.
Okay, the next section is hand washing and respiratory etiquette. Again, this wording is pretty generic. It doesn't specifically mention COVID, I don't believe in here.
Mhm.
So it's removing
It's just-
pathogens that might have been transferred and so it's just good things, good health, safety practices for all. Scroll down, yeah, if you want
Do you
to.
want to go
It's
up or down?
one there that'll work. Right, okay. The next section is contact tracing in combination with isolation or quarantine. So, thank you. So what we've done here is we've inserted the document that the health department gave us mid-second semester of last year where we stopped contact tracing. And that's what that says. We stopped contact tracing. Our nurses will focus on symptoms and identifying that, if they need to go home or something like that, like they always do. If a family calls in and says, we've done an at-home test, you want to talk a little bit about that, Michelle?
Yeah, we're accepting at-home tests, so if they call and tell us that that they tested a child at home, then we're just gonna give them the recommendation, when they can return to school and what they need to do. And
So it's not put on the nurses to say you can come back to school now, like it was in the past with say a negative COVID test.
well, we're just following what the health department gave us in the guidelines. So it just says that if you called me and said your child was positive, I'd say, when did their symptoms start? And then we go 5 days. Day 1 actually starts the day after symptoms started. And then I'd say, okay, on, such and such date, your child can return to school as long as they don't have a fever and they've been fever-free for 24 hours. And their symptoms are, significantly improved. And then they can come to school and they wear a mask for 5 days. So I'm just following that's the CDC guidelines and that's what the health department's given us as far as the
So the
guidelines.
mask would still be optional, but you're.
Not for that.
So if it's day 6 and they want to come back, they have to wear a mask from day 6 through 10.
Or they can stay home.
I think that's a little deceiving if we're saying masks are optional and then saying we need to require them, if we're not requiring them for the flu or other things like that.
We just have to follow what those guidelines are if we have a positive case.
So the exception.
We can choose to follow those guidelines.
I don't think so.
That's something I guess we need to
Uh,
more
yeah,
questions about.
yeah, we can ask some questions.
Yeah, because what's the chances of the health department's guidelines changing if there is?
If the health department guidelines change on
They're only
that,
gonna change if CDC changes.
right, so we'll
So,
have to bring that part, we will have to bring back to you.
And it could change.
right, I mean, so I guess I don't understand why can't we just we follow the current protocol that they're
We could.
recommending?
Could.
So we will follow the current health department guidelines, is what you wanted to say?
Well, I mean, really all it needs to say rather than, because what they currently, I mean, that could change.
And that's true. If we didn't specify them, we maybe would have.
In that same section, you'll see where we do talk about parents having the bulk of the responsibility here. So again, we're not going to say, this is what you have to do, this is, it is on the parents, and it's on the parents to notify, say, a friend, if a friend was a close contact or something like that. We won't be doing that. So they can keep track of the positives in the classroom on our website. That's available to them. But really tracking their child's symptoms and notifying the school if they're sick and not coming, that will all be on the parent to inform us of what's going on or what their child needs for COVID. So. Any questions on that part? There is a section on the health department responsibility there. They are still doing their investigation for positive cases, but that doesn't mean contact tracing. So they are not contact tracing, but they may call somebody that has reported that they're positive and say, hey, what are your symptoms? How are you doing? Do you need anything? Things like that. They may do their normal investigation with that, or it could come from the state. When I had it, I actually got a call from the state and not the local health department saying we're just checking, doing our investigation. So
Will we report positive cases to the health department?
Only if we test them.
Only if it's tested in the school.
Like if you did a home test, then that responsibility falls on the person, like the parent. to call. But if we do the testing, because we give the testing free from KDHE, it's part of what we're required to do. We have to actually enter that test into their state registry.
So do you report under the diagnostic and screening, it says, that there is also the influenza testing that can be done at the school. Is there any requirements on reporting about just the COVID?
Now, I will say that there have been years when we've had a lot of influenza and they have asked for, and I don't know for sure about schools, but I know like medical clinics and places like that for certain age groups. So it's a possibility that could happen at some point if you had enough cases that they may want to start tracking that. So, I mean, we've tracked, because we've been doing the testing here last year, we tracked like influenza, just how many cases we had. And the same thing, every year they come out with guidance for influenza and depend on how they predict it to be. Like they'll say, if they're positive, then they need to stay home for a certain amount of time. At one point, it was 5 days. And then, it could be 24 hours after the fever's gone. So it really depends on, maybe that season.
about our testing, our diagnostic testing. The next section is efforts to provide vaccination to schools and communities. Department, when they're available to provide clinics, or how often Michelle or the health department thinks that's needed, that will include the flu. So we do offer those for our staff members. Again, optional, but kind of a service to our teachers so that they don't have to worry about getting off work and leaving and running in to get a flu shot or whatever. We bring that to them. So. The next section is accommodations for children with disabilities. That section doesn't change. That is going to be up to the the plan that is developed by the special ed team or the 504 team or whatever, and that's kind of Josh's area, if you will. But we have had students, even pre-COVID, that were on homebound because of low immunity or whatever their concern was, that they needed homebound services. So we've always done that. That doesn't really change much, so. And I think Michelle's already talked about the coordination with the state and local health officials. So you want to talk a little bit about your grant and what we get from your grant?
Well, one thing you might do is you struck out department there, and I think you wanted the word department to be left.
Yes, yeah.
So we received a grant last year from KDHE, and in that grant, we hired a nurse. And her primary responsibilities are testing, but she also, right now is helping to cover the Garden City Achieve building too. And we were provided PPE. It's really what we requested, and then testing supplies. So those were all given to us free. So I applied for the grant again this year, and we were awarded the grant again this year. And basically, it's pretty much the same thing that I've asked for is testing supplies, some PPE. We really still have quite a bit of PPE left, so I really didn't ask for a lot of that. And then our nurse. The primary expense is really the nurse that they're providing for us.
To a certain extent, this is a service that a few years ago had to go to immediate care to get, and now it's right there in the school.
Yeah, well, and I know, for a long time, we've really struggled to keep the nurses, it's like the nurses were split between buildings, and this is allowing us to have nurses at each building, so. It's, or the nurse aide, I guess. We have 3 healthcare assistants, which are CNAs that work with the nurse. So we're small buildings, so that way we have somebody there, but. It always seemed that the kid fell off of the playground equipment or something happened when the nurse wasn't there. So that part of the grant is really nice to have the extra staff. And it's a 3-year grant. We have to reapply every year. So there's no guarantee that you get it next year or maybe you even apply for it. It really just depends on how things go this year probably.
So it's tied specific to the COVID need, but obviously we can use those employees in any way to
Yes.
support the nurses and everything.
The next section is ensuring continuity of services. So the first one is meeting students' academic needs. Specifically, when they give you kind of some bullets about how to fill out this section, they ask if we're doing remote learning or virtual learning in any capacity. So that is why that says, students will be in person unless designated through an individual plan such as a 504 IEP or medically homebound. Academic needs will be addressed through the student assistant teams. And students at the middle and high school will have a virtual attendance option through our virtual academy. So that was just very specifically things they asked us to address in that section.
Did every district get the same 2 questions?
Every district got the same questions, yes. This was sent out by the State Department. Social, emotional, mental health. Again, pretty standard here. We use a service called Optum. It's a referral system for our staff in case they need assistance. This can be social, emotional, it can be financial. It's a lot of different services that an employee can use. Then there's a district committee for social emotional learning. It's made up of different community agencies that help provide those kinds of services, and we all work together to see what the needs are in the community or the school at that time. And then we work with Compass and Genesis to provide in-school support and therapy for the students. So all of our, I'm not gonna say all, the majority of our elementary schools have Compass that comes in and provides that kind of support. And this year, Genesis is coming into our secondary schools to provide support. So we're glad to have them. We do have different other supports available, and that's also listed here. So we have counselors, school psychologists, we have a social emotional facilitator, that's Diane. She's come in and given you presentations before on some of that. We have behavior and family support specialists and a mental health intervention team. So we have all of those services available for everyone. And then the last question they asked was about health services and food services. All of our kids will eat breakfast free of charge this year, and nursing services will be available in all buildings every day. So those are just pretty standard answers there. So that's the big document. So any other questions about it? I made notes as we talked, so I think I've got the places where you need to make changes.
Under each part, there's a part 1 and a part 2. Was each one of the sub questions from the state as well?
Yes,
So we have to provide an answer for each one of
Yes.
those?
because all of the different letters, A, B, C, D, under each one is something that was provided to us to answer. And this is supposed to be posted on our website where they can see that we've got it.
Well, if I understand right, we've got a couple of questions yet to be answered, possible
I'll need to bring
revisions
that
depending
back,
on the
yes.
answer there. And then you'll bring it back and
Yes, sir.
then is there sort of a deadline here to try to get this policy in place? Revised?
Well, we're gonna, with needing to revise it, it's going to be after school starts, but I know we've been getting a lot of queries about, are there any changes to our plan? So for right now, I'm just saying the plan is as it is until the board takes action and changes it. So we'll write the current plan and post it, and that's what we will follow until we get the new one updated.
And every 6 months, you have to reevaluate and per ESSER money. You have to go back every 6 months and evaluate your plan.
Right. I guess I agree with Jennifer and Jackie, and part of there's just a lot of words. I would like to reduce that down quite a bit to where it's about a 1-page document almost, or a page and a half, just to not be so wordy about things and explain everything. I think we're in a different point than we were.
I'll do my best. Some of this is, you'll see some blank pages there. That's because of the track changes. So it will be shorter once I take away the track changes and you see the final document. I have to answer every question. So I will have something in every section, but I will bring it back with the things we talked about, and we can go from there. And I will also call and see what some of the other districts are doing. Jennifer asked me to do that as well. What we did do though is, you are absolutely right. As a parent, I don't want to wade through this to find my answer. No. So if you will look at the blue document, that is a 1-page short version of the essentials. We felt like that was necessary just so people didn't have to wade through the long document. So this is essentially everything we went through with just bulleted essential items. So if there's things there that you question, preventative measures are encouraged. In the event of a high concentration in a classroom or other school setting, it may be necessary for administration to require the use of preventative measures. So that may be, let's start spreading the desks out, folks, because you're getting a lot in this classroom. Or if we become short-staffed and we don't have the teachers available, we may need to make some decisions on what do we do next. I mean, we've had to do that in the past. So where we had a lot of our staff out, we had to figure out how to best serve kids. So that is still a possibility. We have the masks are optional. All public health measures will be followed. Vaccination opportunities will be distributed to staff based on eligibility. Hand sanitizing supplies are available. Ventilation is going to be optimized. We have a plan to address the needs in each building. Nurses will continue to monitor for illness. So that's everything, just like they normally do now. So whether it's the flu or COVID or my tummy hurts or whatever it is. Students and staff should stay home if they are sick. You wouldn't think we have to do that, but I know there's a group of us, and I'm probably right in there, that was told, it doesn't matter if you're sick, you go to work and you work, if you can get out of bed, you go to work. So that's been a change in the last few years because people still think, well, I'm not that sick, I can go to work. So there's some of that to work through. Again, the next bullet is in there. It's the responsibility of the family to monitor for symptoms of COVID. COVID testing will be available by appointment. Employees will utilize their leave if they have to quarantine, so there's no COVID leave. So they have to use their regular sick leave or their whatever leave they have available. There's still an accommodation process through the personnel office if someone feels that they need accommodations. And then we will work with the Finney County Health Department if there is an outbreak. We'll maintain the color chart on our website that tells families whether there's a positive in the classroom. And then we have what happens. So it's yellow if there's a positive. If there's 5 or more, then again, we tried not to put that we're going to close a school because that isn't what we want to do. Or close a classroom, but we may have to implement some kind of quarantine or COVID procedures at that point. And then the learning opportunities that are required as well in that document. So a nutshell version of it, John, kind of like what you were saying, this is too long. I had trouble trying to figure out how to make with all those questions, how to make it one page, but we just bulleted it and made it for our families here. And if there's changes you want to see on that, just let me know. And the last thing that I have is our classroom status chart, and that is just on the district website. So if you want to look up your child's classroom, it'll list the building and then every teacher in that building. And if the teacher's name is in green, there are no positives in that classroom. If it's yellow, that means there's at least one positive. And if it's red, then that means that we have had to implement some type of quarantine procedure in that classroom. So a little bit different than past years because red meant we were closing them down before. So just a little bit different communication for the red.
Really, I think, as far as classrooms go, closed them because we didn't have staff.
Yeah. Most of our closings were due to staff being sick. So.
How did you come up with the 5 versus the 3 or?
Well, it was 10%. And so when we start thinking about 10% of a small building, and if it's only like in the kindergarten classroom that you're seeing that, and if say you have a large number of kids in kindergarten that are out with COVID, that you don't want to close the whole school down. And that's kind of what it says really about the 10%. So we were kind of looking at, maybe we just need to look more at individual, and we talked to the health department about it on Thursday, and we wanted to increase from 3. So we said, so basically it was just really a number that we agreed on with them. So
most of the classes are 20 to 27 in our elementary buildings, the top end. So if we have 5 cases in a 20.
it has to be within a 10-day period.
Yeah, and they all have to happen at once essentially.
And so will this be specifically for COVID or again, if we have if we have head lice go through or the flu?
No, we
or-
don't, head lice is not something that we.
But it's something that's highly contagious and.
Somewhat contagious, yes, but so, we do treat it. We do have parents treat it, but we don't exclude anymore for NITs. So as long as the parent treats the child and the child they have proof that they treated it, they can come back to school. So now we have had outbreaks of head lice in kindergarten. We had one last year. And so the nurse goes in and really kind of does an investigation and says, I think you need to pick, those pillows shouldn't be anything that kids are laying on. Let's put it all up, that kind of thing, and looking to see what maybe could be a possibility that's causing it to spread in there. But obviously, if we have some other kind of outbreak that's some other.
Polio on the East Coast. Hopefully not, but
The flu, I'm just looking toward a goal of it being across the board policy for illness in our schools. I'm not trying to contradict or argue. I want our kids to be in school if they're healthy and they're home
So
if
do
they're,
we.
if they're not, and I worry that we're gonna go into a trend again where we're keeping healthy kids home or we're putting them in masks again, and I don't think the benefits of masking outweigh the costs when we have kids in masks. So I'm just trying to tiptoe that a little bit.
Well, I would
Yeah, that's
recommend we
not
stay on top of it, but also you can generalize things to the point that they really don't do the job as far as policy.
So I'll make some phone calls and investigate what some other schools are doing. Jennifer gave me a couple to look at. And then we'll wordsmith this and bring it back at the next board meeting.
Thanks for all your
I
work.
have a question. So if I'm understanding, one positive case triggers the yellow response. So that's requiring masks in the classroom,
No.
staggered, all that, or that's,
No.
That's the wrong one.
Yep,
All it does is trigger
Yep, I gave you the wrong one. Sorry about that.
that was last year.
thank you.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, the
I was
right one should have
confused there
been in
for
your
a
board
second.
packet, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it just signifies a positive, so nothing
We're
else
not doing
happens.
the modified.
Thank you for saying that, because, yeah, I gave you a copy of the old one.
And I missed part of this because I stepped out several times. But is this something, I almost feel like there's enough here to replace all of these pages. Do we need all these specifics?
I think we do because of the questions that we were asked for Esther's.
The
So I-
specificity of the
Yeah.
questions. you
Yeah,
have to
I think we
respond to.
have to have this document. Now, John asked if I can shorten it up to try to get it to fewer pages, so I'll work on that.
I think to meet the grant requirements and that, I think we're going to
Well,
have
and
to
I don't
have
want to
some of
take
that,
funding
you
away
know.
from that at all. I did share one with Linda that Jennifer and she's been helping me a little bit with questions I had found with Blue Valley, and they basically, and you'll have that paper there to read too. They rescinded their COVID policies. So I don't know how they're getting around that, but they're not tracking it specifically. They have their COVID dashboard up. And they do talk about how masks are optional. It's just keeping their air infiltration and cleaning processes. So I don't know if that answers those questions. I want to make it as simple as possible and get school back to normal.
I'll call them
And
specifically.
it's possible that this might be on their website, but they're not calling it their policy.
Right,
That's maybe their policy but this is there because it has to be
So
posted.
that's more of a procedure thing.
in order to have Esther's, yes. So,
So can we have both? We have a COVID policy that we operate on the school, and then we have the questions answered for the funding. And it doesn't have to be the same.
No, I think they have to.
I think you have
You
to,
have to align it
Align.
somewhere.
yeah, we have to have them. We can have something just like we have a one page here. But if you tell me no masks at all, you know, or for whatever reason, then I'm gonna answer it that way. I would rather be honest and say, oh, the board says no masks. So, or if there's something else that you feel that strongly about, I'd rather be honest in this, and just say, no, we're not doing it. Dance around, and try to figure out how to apply. I'd rather know or maybe be honest in our answers to that.
And I just brought that up, that I gave that to you because I felt like it was important for everyone to know what we're discussing. And I hope to meet with you some more, to ask more questions as you find stuff out.
I'll start calling
The
the
rest
rest
of the
of
board.
them.
Certainly want the health professionals to be very comfortable with it.
Yes, yes.
Well, and I'm kind of like Jennifer, I just don't want to, there could be, if this could be all inclusive with other things to include, you know, not just limited to the COVID, to include
Flu and
that would.
make it easier.
One of the things that I get a lot of feedback from parents is on the vaccination things at the school. So I like that we have optional on-site immunizations for things, but I would strike out that we're gonna do that for COVID vaccinations. I think that's polarizing to half the people don't want it, half the people do want it. And I think our business is illegal. So I would like to not have any COVID vaccinations per se. Because the vaccinations have been available to people for almost a year and a half now. And I would say that if anyone wants one, that number should be pretty small. But not vaccination.
However, we offer flu vaccines for our staff. It's a service to our staff. We don't tell them they have to get it, but we say,
I'm saying that's
Yeah.
fine,
you know,
those type of things. I'm just saying we end the COVID
but
portion of that
if the
completely.
flu and the COVID, if we're looking at making this policy go for all of it, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit here, John. But I know we've got, for as many parents maybe that have difficulty with, why are you offering COVID vaccines? We have staff that are saying, what are you doing to keep us safe? So somewhere, you know, we need to find a way to walk that middle ground, because I don't want to lose staff because they feel like we've taken all the COVID protocols away and they no longer feel safe in their classroom. And that's a real thing. So we have, you know, we have staff that have immunocompromised positions because they've had cancer, for example. And they appreciate that we do stuff to try to keep them all safe. We don't get probably a lot of parents that bring their kids in for that, but the last one we had for staff, they were lined up down the hallway. So if we can help so that they don't have to leave work early and make an appointment with the health department or their physician or Walgreens or wherever, because you're right, they do have them everywhere. To get them, I see it as a kind of a service to our staff. So I'm just going to throw that out there and kind of food for thought, if you will. I just know for every one of these that we say, no, we're not going to do, we're going to have staff call and say, why aren't you? So how do, as deputy superintendent, how do I balance what some of our staff are saying as far as their needs are? And we have other staff that are saying, I don't want masks in my classroom. But if this one says, I need extra protection, I feel like we ought to try to help them. I mean, we have face shields now that we can give them. We have the N95 masks that we can give them without them maybe putting the kids in masks, but we have things we can give them to help them feel more comfortable. So,
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you want even with influenza, other things too.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think you're
Yeah,
spot on.
so I'm kind of, the reason I'm cringing is it's not that I don't want to do what the board wishes. Well, absolutely, you guys vote and tell us and you say yes or no and you get to decide. But I just want you to be aware that there's another side to it, and somewhere I would like to find a way to walk the middle ground so that we don't lose staff because we aren't keeping them safe. So,
I certainly appreciate all your work.
Yeah.
And I know the rest of the board.
well, I got some homework now, so I'll get on that and then I'll get back with you. So,
Thank you for that.
Mhm, absolutely.
Answering our questions.
No problem. Thank
We'll
you.
get school started.
I know.
We are going to move on to new business. Great.
Okay.
All right, so revenue neutral rate and the budget items on your agenda will be together, just so that you all have a heads up. All right, so tonight I'll be presenting on the high level overview of what to expect with the 22-23 budget. In front of you, you have a budget binder that includes the budget timeline and a copy of the presentation in front. In the front cover, there's a timeline, and then the actual presentation will be there in the front. This evening, we will be discussing the following topics. Changes to the general fund and local option budgets. Our budget priorities. Assessed valuation. Mill levy, our budget timeline. Right, so for our general budget, this year, currently I have it projected at 58.5 million. Last year, we came in at 54.2 million. This is a expected increase of 4.3 million. Essentially, what I am projecting for the budget this year is we had that extra low year last year with the unexpected 1.8 million deficit. So I'm projecting that we'll be able to rebound from that and then can get the district back to where we were 2 years ago. So getting back into that timeline with our weightings. So projecting out to a 4.3 million increase. The way that our budget works is we set our ceiling for the school district with our proposed budget. So we say, this is what we expect our budget to look like. We do our September 20th count. And then in the springtime, the auditor, KSDE auditor will come in and then verify what those counts are, our weightings, and then give us final numbers. Typically, I'll have final numbers for that current budget year, May to June timeline. So I'll be then finding out kind of what that budget looks like. So right now I'm just doing a projected amount for this school year. So for our local option budget is our supplemental general fund. It is 31% of our general fund, currently projected at a $1.1 million increase there. So our budget priorities. We typically like investments to attract and retain the best possible staff to work with our children. Kind of heard Dr. Alcorta's presentation today about how we are actively working on these priorities. Evidence and research-based programs to improve our student outcomes. And maintaining reasonable local property taxes. So this is our enrollment summary for the last 6 years. As you can see, we've had a decline for the past several years, but the decline from the 2020 to 21 school year is the lowest it's been for the last 5 years. Garden City is still expected to continue to grow, so we're anticipating the enrollment decline is going to either level out or it's going to start increasing again as more people move into our community. This slide shows the assessed valuation over the last 12 years. As you can see, there's been quite a bit of variation over the years, but most recently we have had 3 years in a row where our valuation has increased. With our assessed valuation continuing to grow, that creates the opportunity for the district to assess additional funding to provide quality education to our community. Here on this next slide, it's a summary of our mill levies over the last 9 years. As you can see, the school board has been able to keep the mill levy flat from the 16-17 school year through the 2021 school year. The board voted last year to raise the mill levy 0.6 mils. What I'm proposing this year is to keep our mill levy flat at 49.4 mils. This year, the property owners are receiving an additional tax break. Typically, a property owner does not have to pay taxes on the first $20,000 valuation of their property. This year, that has now been raised to $40,000 to provide additional relief to taxpayers. Our revenue neutral rate this year is 44.4 mils. This rate is the number of mills we would need to levy and collect the same dollar amount of taxes that we did last year. If we chose to do this, we would end up losing approximately $1.2 million of funding for the school district. With the rising expenses of our operational expenses for the district, such as motor fuel, electricity, propane gas, construction expenses, and many more, we would utilize these funds to continue to move the district forward to meeting the needs of our students. So our mill levy calculation. So there are, of course, some positive impacts. So our increase in assessed valuation, our increase in our base state aid per pupil, that increased from 4706 per student to 4846 per student for 22-23. Our increase in state aid for bond and interest, it was 58% for the 21-22 school year. It is 62% for the 22-23 school year. And our increase in FTE and weightings, anticipating that those will continue to increase with our at-risk and high-density at-risk weightings, primarily we've already looked at preliminary numbers from our free and reduced lunch applications. We're working on endorsing more teachers to help count more bilingual contact hours. Those all impact our weightings, thus impacting our funding. This year already being over the 50% in free and reduced lunch status, we will qualify for the high density at risk. So there will be additional weighted funding on top of the at-risk funding that we already received. So those things help raise our total revenue overall.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Go for it.
I don't know if you're the right one to ask on this, but of course, the free and reduced lunch applications are, since everybody's getting free lunch. Correct?
All students get free breakfast. Yep, our free students get free lunch this year, but also free technology and instruction fees. Reduced status students, the district will be paying for them to have free lunches this year, but they will still pay full fees.
The numbers are used for much more than just that.
Right.
And in the past, we've struggled to get applications or information from families, applications from families, really, I guess.
Sure.
And has that improved?
Drastically. We saw a big improvement in that this year with just our in-person enrollment event, having that one-stop shop, having everybody kind of come to one location, moving through all of the paperwork. So that was a major identified need to doing an in-person event. But of course, last year when it changed to a household economic survey, but everybody was still receiving lunches, that's where we assessed that $1.8 million loss, because there wasn't really an incentive for parents to fill them out and provide their income information if they were already receiving free lunches. So that unfortunately impacted our funding. This year with some of those implemented changes, we've been able to now reassess and increase a lot of those weightings and expect those to continue to increase. So there's a lot of good work happening at all levels so that we can rebound from that setback that we had last year.
There was also an announcement by the feds last week on direct certification process. So direct certification, if students qualify through migrant status, homeless status, they're directly certified for free lunches. They don't have to apply. So it was last Tuesday, I think Tracy got the information. She opened up her direct certification piece, and we had 1,000 more students on our direct cert list than we had the previous day. And then she got an email said that federal's guidelines for that changed to any student that has a medical card, a state or federal issued medical card, or anyone in the family has a medical card, they're now direct cert. And so we went from having about 1,800 students to 2,800 students on a direct cert. So that helps our free reduced numbers as well. But that was a change that just happened last week. So the enrollment did get us over the 50%, but then we had another big jump last week as well. Now, there's not any other number to try to get to, but we do have a large portion due to that new direct certification process that just happened last week.
So then they don't have to fill out that form.
Correct. Now, the difficult part is some of them already had, and they hadn't qualified, so we told them they didn't, and now they qualify. Some had already qualified and filled out the app, and now they, don't have to. But that direct certification goes with them every year, so they don't have to wait till next year. If they still have that, they will be directly certified next year, and they'll get a letter from Nutrition Services saying they're certified for free reduced lunches.
Last year's free and reduced lunch percentage, we ended at 46%. This year we're already over 51%. So good jump. Even going into the beginning of the year, school hasn't even started, we're already there. It's.
Well, you guys put in extra time and hard work to get that done.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for that. One of the negative impact factors, though, to our increase in revenues, so our increase in bond payments, it did increase from 6.7 million from the 2020 to 21-22 school year to the 22-23 year. It's 6.9 million, so $200,000. All right, so for budget timeline, so August 15th, we will be meeting with a couple of the board members at 4 p.m. to do a deeper dive in the budget committee meeting, so a deeper dive into that binder. So if you guys could review the binders, prepare questions, I'd happily answer any of those. And anytime between now and the 17th, if the board members have any questions, if you could send those over to Dr. Dominguez, that I can send them back to you with appropriate responses, so that next time when I come to the August 22nd meeting, I'll have the request to publish the budget on the website newspaper. So that will be it's called our Code 99 document that will then publish. It has to be published for 10 days prior to our budget hearing. Our budget hearing is September 12th. And then also on the August 22nd meeting, we'll also do our building needs assessment presentation. So you'll need that information to adopt on the September 12th meeting as part of your budget timeline adoption as well.
That's coming from the principals and their councils.
So September 12th, we'll have that public hearing for the budget, setting our revenue neutral rate and also adopting our budget needs assessment. Again, there's that summary in your binders as well that also has this information as well. Questions?
Any questions? Sure, mine will come later.
No worries. Follow them on. I'm happy to get any answers that you guys have. I know it's a lot of information. It's obviously a pretty big budget. In your binders, you have a mix of our internal Excel sheets as well as code documents that we report those numbers to the state. Happy to answer any questions, so please feel free to send them that way.
Thank you for adding the timeline in there too.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anyone else?
Sounds like some homework.
Yep. Look at our reading skills.
Just, passing it on, down the line here. Hope you enjoy it. Yeah, thank you.
Student transportation with Brenda and Charlie.
So this is one of the policies that KSB updated in June. So I've been bringing them to you a couple at a time, and tonight with all the other stuff, I chose to just have one on the agenda, but we'll double up here again before too long probably. So this one has been vetted by KSB, and then I have also sent it to Jennifer Cunningham to review, and we'll talk through that, and Charlie and I can answer any questions. So this, like another one that we had, takes the JGDR completely off the table and merges the two into one document. So school provided transportation shall be available to and from school for those students who, and then our criteria is listed there. And that is something that Jennifer specifically asked that we include. So the KSB policy did not include the district criteria, but she felt like that was good to include. And transportation may be provided by the district for all school activities. Transportation may be denied to students who are detained after school for disciplinary reasons. So because of that timeline and the number of buses we have and all of those considerations, we can't wait around if a student has detention, for example. So Charlie has to get the rest of the kids home.
Then students who use the school-provided transportation shall be under the jurisdiction of the vehicle driver. And I'm gonna let Charlie kind of talk about that next section and how the drivers actually handle that discipline a little bit.
Where it says driver shall report violations of the rules to the director of transportation. One of the things that it asked for, or the policy came down, basically asked for the drivers to report to the principal and let the principal deal with it. I kind of just take the middleman out of that, and I'll sit with the drivers and I'll talk to them about what's going on the bus, what happened. Because basically they could tell the principal's gonna call me and say, do you have video of it? Can you pull the video and see what exactly happened? So instead of having them having to do all that, I'm just gonna go ahead and take care of it that way. Because that's what I've been doing for the 7 years that I've been there. Just talking with the principals and seeing what they wanna do. A lot of the principals like to handle it because they'll say that it's an extension of the classroom. And they're going to do a disciplinary action with them where they'll say, it really wasn't a disciplinary thing, but you go ahead and handle it how you want to handle it. So that's kind of why we put that in there, that the driver shall come to me and talk to me about it first. It's not that I don't want the drivers writing the students up or doing anything, but I'd like to talk to them first and just say, first of all, have you talked to the parents? Have you contacted the parents? Let them know this is a behavior that's been going on. And a lot of times I can get a hold of the principals and just say, has the student been acting out recently? Find out what's going on with the student. If this is kind of abnormal for the student, then we can deal with it on the bus in a different way rather than going to a disciplinary action.
So that is just a slight difference from what KSB sent out. As Charlie noted, KSB's policy said the bus driver will contact the principal, and he's added that step where they go to him. So that was something Jennifer approved as well. So. And then students are prohibited from driving personal vehicles to and from district-sponsored activities held during or after school day unless authorized in writing by the student's parent or guardian, and that has been there for a long, long time. So, and then the rules are published in the handbook. So they've combined the two policies into one, and we can take questions, but it will be on the consent agenda at the next board meeting.
So the last one that you have there were, it's been on there for a long time, but say baseball or softball, when they leave school and drive their own vehicle to a practice or swimming to the pool, how does that affect that?
So for practice,
Yes.
I don't know that.
I know that's kind of been the policy for the longest time, that they're on their own to get down for practices. I know softball, baseball, they go down to the softball fields and they usually drive their own vehicles to go to games as
So
well,
there's
to
no-
home games.
There's no busing transportation.
There is no busing for
practices.
practices or games in town. So
So does something else need to be in here?
Let me ask Drew if he gets the letters from the parents. of those. So, and then if he doesn't, then I'll ask Jennifer what we need to add to clarify that. Perfect. Good question.
Well, I think it kind of answers itself. It says, when the district provides transportation, well, it doesn't provide transportation for home games or practice.
right.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion of Board of Education vacancy. Dr. Dominguez, did you want to touch base on that anymore since you've been in contact with Cammy?
Well,
Or
just on a personal matter, I think Cammie has chosen to step down, and then we have to honor that with, I think she has a family issue going on, and that's fine. And then we can proceed in many different fashions, but and open it up or however you want to do.
okay, well, I'll read what we're required to do and then ask for motion to allow Cammy to Okay, I'll read the first part and then we'll be ready for motion. The board must publish a notice in the newspaper that the vacancy has occurred, and the board can then fill the vacancy by appointment 15 days after the publication. And the options to fill the vacancy: appoint the next highest vote getter from the last election, appoint someone who has just recently applied, take new applications and appoint from those, and reach out to a prior board of education member. And that's just something reins as we move forward with that. I will ask for a motion.
Can I, a little bit of discussion first of
Go
all.
ahead.
Of course, the process here is we've got to accept a resignation.
Right.
Resignation first.
So do we have a resignation
Yes,
other than verbal?
Yes.
yes, she sent out a letter of resignation. Did you put that in there? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That, because I hadn't seen anything there,
Yeah.
so as long as we have that, then we can act on it.
Okay, yes.
So with that, Madam President, I move that we accept the resignation of Kemi McDonald, regrettably. But certainly in support of her family. And adopt the resolution of board vacancy to publish the vacancy notice in the Garden City Telegram.
Do we have a second? Second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passed. And we will move on from that. Thank Kami for what she's done for us,
Yes.
so we'll miss having her here. Okay, we are ready for board open discussion. I know I always have eager volunteer to go first.
Hello.
Okay, there we go.
I just, I don't have much, I continue to be amazed by the amount of work that goes into everything and how hard people work. And we haven't started school yet, so recruiting and budget and all that, so I appreciate everything.
I'm going to echo that. Number of friends on other boards, school boards, and they're dealing with very similar issues, and it just amazes me how much, the kind of resources that we have and that we've developed here in the district. And we have a strong leadership and a strong staff and a great community. So even with the challenges that we saw the numbers here earlier today on the staffing, and with my fellow board members in mind, I'm pretty optimistic that we can do this, and pretty proud of our district. Just some comments.
Yeah, great, thank you. Jackie?
I agree, Lisa, but also, I think the transition of different positions and new people, I think everyone's done a good job in administrative building, kind of taking on new things and not staggering behind on anything, just keeping things going and moving in a good direction.
John?
Good, I agree.
Well, first I want to apologize. Teddy apparently doesn't want to be at board meetings. So thank you for your patience on that. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be a kindergarten teacher on the first day of school sometimes, that's kind of where I felt. He wasn't sure he wanted to be here. So I apologize for that. We'll stick with visiting classrooms in Linda's office for a while. And thank you for answering all my questions, and I appreciate the good discussions, even when they're the hard ones, because that's how we move forward with things. And I'm excited. Last meeting, I said I wasn't ready for school to start because I was still looking for some summer fun, but with all the things that have been going on with the district already, I'm excited to get the new year started and the new leadership and the enthusiasm of the principals I see from their talent show the other day. I want tickets for that next year. So
Principals that there will be a next year because I'm not so sure.
they
some
might
of them-
not show up.
They might not show up.
We'll have to come up with something different then. I'm excited for the positive outlook of the district, the enthusiasm, because that helps kids want it. What's the word I'm say, it flows down to them when our staff and our teachers are excited and have positive, and we market it. What a wonderful place our district is. It trickles down to our students and our parents, and they get excited about how we live in the classroom. So thank you for that attitude. Even the positivity in the budget when I'm overwhelmed by the numbers. Yeah. So Dr. Dominguez?
Yeah, absolutely. So the inertia, definitely the leadership team and the teachers and the principals, inertia that it takes to put in goals and systems in place and providing, engaging, enriching, empowering. And that's what you're talking about, engaging, enriching, empowering people. But we have a hyper focus on literacy this year through all contents. They're all content areas. We're going to engage the students and the stakeholders. Once we bring the students in, that'll bring their, whatever their family situation looks like, it'll bring their family into it and then move the whole community forward. So we're going to write across, be able to write, read, and discuss high levels of thoughts and topics. So that's all part of our goals, definitely, but you have to have systems in place to ensure that's occurring. And we're definitely doing that. And that's our hyper focus this year. Wildly important goal is literacy this year. Exciting.
The next Board of Education meeting will take place on Wednesday, August 17th at 5:30 PM in the board meeting room at the Educational Support Center. And we will move into executive session.
Sounds like my cue. I don't find the notes, so I'll just say, I move that we go into executive session for 10 minutes.
Okay.
The reasoning, I don't have it with me here. To discuss a matter with our legal counsel pursuant to the exception of matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, beginning at, I just might say 20 minutes till 8. And then the board meeting will resume at 10 till.
Okay. And
And I want to invite Dr. Dominguez, Glenda LaBarbera, and Jennifer Cunningham to join us in that executive session.
do we have a second? Okay, I'm gonna throw this in here as discussion in case anyone sneaks out before we come back. The board members are also invited to attend the ribbon cutting for the new turf at Buffalo Stadium at Garden City High School. Following the meeting, no board business will be discussed. Wanted to make sure that was. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?